All right, guys, we're just going to be waiting just a few more minutes. We've got lots of people coming on, so we'll wait 1 or 2 minutes before getting started.
It's called the COVID-19 5 minutes, that everybody's like a little bit 5 minutes late for everything, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's like my workout routine now. It's
Yeah.
slow and steady.
Yeah.
All right, 1 more minute.
I have to wait for all those people that I paid to be on the webinar.
Yeah, and I have to wait for you know, my 42 people in my family.
Right.
Irish Catholic.
Hi, Mom. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, hi, I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar and our discussion of getting back to work. Very excited about this topic. It has been top of mind for me and for many of our colleagues and our clients out there in Southern California and beyond. And before we go any farther, we will have a Q&A. Certainly write your questions in the Q&A, and we're going to come at the end and we can answer any questions that you might have, but we'll do that at the end. We also have 3 polling questions, which we will, bring in 1 in the beginning and then 2 at the end, just so that everyone gets a little bit of idea where we all are at in this process. First off, I'm Jennifer Hannigan. I'm founder and CEO of Alliance Resource Group. We are an executive search and temporary staffing firm that concentrates in finance and accounting. We have significant experience here in Southern California, and that is probably one of the reasons why you have heard about this webinar. Like most businesses, we've been working from home since mid-March, since the shelter in place was put in for Southern California. And although we are very excited to be able to come back to work, we are grappling with what that's going to look like. From speaking to many of our clients, we know that most of you have been having similar discussions, and these are what changes need for the office, right? What team structures do timing changes, do rotation, what happens when we all kind of get back into the office? So a lot of people are talking about it, and there is smidgens of information and guidance out there, but it's really hard to get your arms all the way around it to make you feel like, you've checked all the boxes, or covering all your bases. And many of our attendees today are either members of the Office of the CEO or the executive branch, or in human resources. And these 2 or 3 groups represent chief risk officers for their prospective organizations. And this is probably an item that is keeping everyone up at night, because it is me. So many of the if you are in charge or even assisting with trying to get your company back into the office safely, this is no small feat and a big undertaking, regardless of the size of your organization. So not only do you want people to be safe, you want people to feel safe. And that communicating and executing a back to work strategy is crucial for the success of this happening, in particular as we kind of transition into this next phase. And that's exactly why we're here today. I am so excited to introduce a fellow Orange County CEO, Cheryl Osborn. Cheryl is the CEO of Casco this is like a tongue twister, Casco Contractors Design Studio. She started her company from her kitchen table and has grown it to be one of the most highly regarded tenant improvement companies in California. She has completed more than 5,000 projects and over 400 million in revenue. When COVID-19 hit, Cheryl quickly recognized an important pivot and pulled her team together to begin thinking about how to help her clients upgrade their workspaces to be safer and healthier now and also in the future. Cheryl has made it her personal quest to help companies throughout Southern California and beyond come back to work safely and effectively. I'm thrilled that we get to learn from Cheryl. Take it away.
Oh, thank you. Learn from me. Gosh, that makes me nervous because I know how smart everyone is on this webinar, and I just build shit. I'm just a contractor. So like, I really apologize if, you know, you guys are way up here, but I'm going to dumb it down for you. So it'll make it really easy. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for that lovely introduction and what you've done to, you know, for all this COVID stuff. So yeah, it's a problem, right? Everybody says that they hear that this is, you know, what you need to do. You need to social distance, you need to do this, but no one's really explaining the how. So Casco Contractors is a contractor, tenant improvement contractor. We also have an interior architectural group. And so we felt like we were really able to self-proclaim ourselves as subject matter experts and able to actually execute. And that's kind of what we focused on. Like, let's take all the information that we're getting from, you know, all these crazy places, and let's just assimilate it. And then let's figure out how this is, you know, appropriate for the workspaces throughout. So if you go to the next slide, you know, these are all the things that people are talking about right now that are kind of confusing the heck out of everyone. You know, the temperature checks, do we need them? What is 6 feet? What does that mean? What does that look like? You know, a safe workplace, what does that mean? And I think, Jennifer, you touched on it the best, is it really means how someone feels. So we were pretty shocked to understand how nervous our, you know, people, you know, we're just a construction company, how nervous everyone was to go back to work. And I think that's was our biggest takeaway. So making someone feel safe can look very different for your company or someone else's company. Also, depending on people's age, depending on, you know, their requirement, who they live with, who they associate with. You know, if they're bringing groceries like I am to my mom because I won't let her leave the house, you know, everybody has to have their own level of safe. And I think it's the job of the CEO or the HR department to really figure that out and make sure that we can make your own company safe, because it's very custom. So if you go to the next, go ahead.
And Cheryl, I mean, you know, you kind of talked upon that, the survey situation, just about how, you know, I've got some clients that have been doing, we just did our own, and just how shocking it's just across the board, you know, from very uncomfortable to, you know, no problem, open the doors, I'm coming in. And that you really have to have a temperature check. That's a COVID.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
A COVID-19 joke?
Yeah, COVID-19 joke. Just kind of where everyone's at. You have to be very mindful of that.
Yeah, so we actually put together a survey, and I'm happy to share it. I think it's on our website. If not, I'll make sure that my boys get it on there afterwards. They're great at that. So we have a survey that, you know, if it, you know, it's custom to us, but it may help someone get started. And we sent it out to the different departments because every different department has different, you know, requirements. So I'm happy to share that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you go to the next slide, please. So Governor Newsom, I don't know how many of you are in California, but we're obviously in California, and I think a lot of the people are Californians. You know, he had this 6-point plan that keeps evolving, right? And then, you know, in fact, today I was just driving and all these restaurants are now open everywhere. So, you know, I think that we can't really, we don't know how fast or how slow this is gonna roll out. But his 6-point plan is great, but it really means nothing to anyone's business on how to get people back to work. So if you go to the next slide, I went ahead and, you know, if you talk about safe, it's, you know, protected from or not exposed to danger or risk. And you know, we can tap this all day long, but it really is the most important thing. So what we do is we look at the survey results, we hear out what people are saying, and then we go in and survey, and we see kind of everybody's sort of environment, and we customize a plan for that. And then I recommend that some CEOs are open to it and some aren't, to go ahead and send out that plan back to the employees so that the employees can say, yes, that checks the box of me feeling safe. So the next slide is actually an interesting sort of thing that's coming, that's kind of dovetailing in with COVID-19, and it's the healthy building. Is your building healthy? And a lot of people never really paid attention to that. And Harvard, I always say, what does Harvard say? Because, you know, I'm jealous of whatever they say. But they did a study on, you know, the impact to the business and the effectiveness of how you execute it and what that means. So like, for example, you can see on this slide, like wearing masks is a very low impact. Technically, I hate wearing a mask, but I will. You know, wearing a mask is a very low impact, and it's got a medium amount of effectiveness. But this elimination of exposure is the highest impact on your business because it requires the most amount of change and the most amount of you know, reorganizing yourselves or retrofitting yourselves. And it also goes to that work from home, because I think, you know, the jury's still out on how much work from home time, you know, we're gonna end up being as the new normal. But I can tell you from my own survey, what came back was people expect to work from home no less than 25% per week. So that seems like it's kind of like that baseline, like that one day at home seems to be what people are saying. And I've had similar results from other companies and their surveys. So I think it's important to understand if you do have a healthy building. One of the statistics that they said is that if your ambient temperature in someone's office is just 1 degree off, just 1 degree off from what they consider to be the perfect working environment, you lose 5% of effectiveness. So if you're 5 degrees off, either too cold or too hot, which doesn't seem like it would matter, you know, with the COVID thing, but people are starting to connect the two, right? If you're just, you know, 5 degrees off, you're 25% less effective in your workspace. And so understanding that really makes us understand, like, you know, how less effective are we making people by putting, you know, by social distancing them, by putting up these partitions, by doing all that. And, you know, again, it's a very custom thing for each individual company.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So
yeah,
a great time, I think, for our first question. Would that be okay for our
yeah.
Let's queue up the first question here? It should come up here on okay, so if COVID-19 were to end today, how long would you estimate it would take for your company to get back to business as usual? Less than a month, 1 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12, or more than 12 months? We'll take a quick moment here so that people can answer.
It's a really, really important and kind of scary question, right?
Absolutely. And this is what we do know, because there's so many unknowns. So this is
right.
What we all estimate. Okay. So interesting. Wow. Okay. So one to 3 months is, I mean, not by too much, but that's the highest, which kind of the summer months, which would be kind of what our expectation is from a California perspective and how people are getting back to work. But and so it's nice to see a good chunk or the majority in the next 3 months. But you know, you have the other side out there that take considerably longer for us to get back to where we you know, where we once were before this whole black swan turned out. So great.
That's crazy. And if you put that into perspective, that's like September, right? So, I mean, crazy.
Absolutely.
So if you want to go to the next slide, thank you. So this is the 6-point assessment that we designed in order to help our clients and help anyone that wants to look this stuff up. So really it's the responsibility of the company or the consultant that they hire to do this. And what we do is we go in and we say, all right, what are the areas where people are going to be too close to each other, in each other's spaces? And the first 3 that come up is always reception area, break room, and conference rooms. And so those are honestly the areas that are the most affected, because it's interesting because the next one is the existing density and furniture, and all that old nasty 6x8 cubes that we used to have that we've all like tossed so that we could get the collaborative furniture. Those all comply with COVID-19 and the collaborative furniture doesn't. So it's kind of funny, like if you have those old workstations that are bigger than a 6x6, you do comply in an open office setting. Directional signage is another thing, and we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, so just recognizing the areas that are at risk. And then, the virtual workforce piece is huge. And, what we figured out right away is that even my own company personally did not have proper technology to do a Zoom meeting that didn't echo and have a bad camera angle and all of these things. So those things are important, because if we do go back to work, your particular cubicle space may not be good for Zoom meetings, because I don't see those stopping. I see that being one of those things that is changed forever. So where do people go if they need to Zoom and they need to go, they can't go take up an entire conference room, because you can only get 3 people or 4 people in a conference room nowadays, So it's really understanding, do people have a safe place or a good safe place effectively to be productive for, for a Zoom call. We talked about the surveying, trust is the biggest thing right now. You have to get your employees to trust you. And honestly, it's going to become one of those things that is going, it used to be like, do they have flexible hours? All of those things that a lot of millennials worried about. Now it's going to be, are they making my workplace safe? What is their plan to make me safe? It's going to really be, I think, something that employees are now in the driver's seat. And then right now is a great time, especially for all those people that said 1 to 3 months they're not going to be back to normal, is looking for those capital improvements that you thought maybe you wanted to do before, but like it seemed like too much of a pain. It's right now's the time to do it. When those offices are empty, I can't tell you how much work we've gotten done with people not in offices making noise complaints, not in the parking lot areas, and we've gotten so much construction done because there's not a lot of people around. And I see that switching kind of quickly. So taking a look at that is important. And then, obviously, what is my workforce going to look like? Is it going to be bigger or smaller? I mean, everybody knows that these are all kind of common sense, but really they're hard to get to. So that's our back to work assessment. And I think it's easy enough for anyone to do on their own. And then if you go to the next slide, we have our back to work plan. So my incredible team, pivoted so fast when this happened. Like we started figuring things out right at the end of March, because they were really concerned and they thought it was going to be something that obviously we were going to be necessary for. So they pivoted so fast and started developing relationships with all these people, because I don't know if anybody's tried to get hand sanitizer. I think it's good now, but a month ago it was impossible to find, right? So we put together this plan that has the retrofit, which is basically the things that you can do immediately and you may or may not need help with. The reorganize, which is how does your workspace look now with all the social distancing and what do you need to do? And then the reenergize is actually how you're planning for the future, because people are going to need to be re-energized to actually be motivated to get back to work. And I think I'm seeing that with some of my employees. They've gotten very accustomed to being at home, and you're going to need to kind of convince people that they want to get back. So the retrofit is actually the first step, and that's where so cleaning is the biggest thing that people are talking about, and it's actually the one thing, sterilizing, cleaning, it's actually the thing that we have become subject matter experts on. there are COVID-19 certified and warranted cleaning companies, but what they do is they come in and they charge you a gazillion dollars, and they basically say, great, you're COVID free until the first person walks in the door. And I think that's the biggest thing. So I would recommend, if anybody had somebody that tests positive for COVID, immediately doing one of those types of cleans, and then immediately communicating to your employees that you did it. But I'm not sure that they're necessary if there's no sort of known cases, and they're very expensive, and they have that tailgate warranty. But pre-sterilizing is always good. Janitorial companies are really not, they hire people that are actual qualified to sterilize. So just make sure that you know what that company's doing. I mean, how are they sterilizing it? Are they cleaning everyone's workspaces? Are they cleaning people's keyboards? Or are you required to do that for people when they come back? The no-touch thing is huge. I mean, no-touch faucets. A lot of my people wouldn't even consider coming back unless they said, can you do something about the faucets in the bathroom? So we replace them. No-touch faucets, no-touch door openers are huge. Just limiting that amount of touching anything. And the restroom seems to be a big area for that. The HEPA filters are great. I mean, I think they're also one of those things that you could put on your survey. Would you feel more comfortable if we put in HEPA filters? Because they do sometimes cause other problems, but people like the idea of saying, hey, there's a filter in my HVAC and it circulates through the filter. The jury's a little out on that one, quite honestly. The package drop off in quarantine, a lot of people take that really seriously. 24 hours in quarantine. A lot of people are like, I think it's okay. The automatic restroom doors we talked about, and sanitizing stations. They're gonna have to be very strategically located and kind of everywhere. So that could be something that's built in, or that could be something that you just go to Target and buy some hand sanitizer. There's a lot of ways, to do that, but they're gonna need to be everywhere, and there's gonna need to be processes written on how people need to use them. The next slide just kind of goes over all of that, and I think we're gonna go ahead and give people the slide so you can kind of check. But I think it's time for companies to start asking questions. Are we gonna temperature check people, or are we gonna make that their responsibility? Are we going to require everyone to wear a mask? Most people are saying yes. Some people are only requiring their employees to wear masks, and anyone that comes in, it's kind of up to them. So all those policies really have to be done now and put in a written form and have them circulated to all your employees and have them understand them and sign them and acknowledge them prior to coming back to work. So we've figured out how to help people with that as well. So the air purification, we kind of touched on that. I think the healthy building piece is a little bit more important, because if there's something that certifies the building, so there's like 3 or 4 different certifying agencies that will come certify your workspace or your building. It's a little bit trickier to get your workspace certified if your building isn't, if there's shared air. But I think that people are going to really start looking at how clean is my building, how new is it, how good is the air, what the temperature is. So those are things that healthy buildings will do for you. They'll do like a survey. And so then during this retrofit piece, what we do is we go ahead and start recommending, hey, this is what you need to do in these spaces. So you'll notice, like in a reception area, we actually do plans that have bubbles, and you'll see that in a couple of the next slides. But the density of people is coming down tremendously, almost 50% in common areas is what we're finding. But in in workspaces, not as significant of a, because there's some workstations that actually do need social distancing.
So Cheryl,
Yeah.
I have a question for you. You know, we've talked about the reception area a couple of times, and I think that is probably, you know, we have an office that's a very busy office. We're going to put a policy in no visitors, but we do have, you know, we have people that come and water the plants, and we have lots of packages that come. Do you have any tips, you know, any insider tips or anything extra that we can help kind of make the reception? Because I believe the reception area is probably one of the biggest concerns for most companies.
It is, and yes, so I recommend always putting up a plexiglass barrier in front and possibly to the side, depending on the layout of your receptionist desk. There has to be a very tall barrier in between, and it has to be cleaned like 3 or 4 times a day. That would be like absolutely, because it's just putting someone behind that desk and having them be vulnerable like that, I think is not so good. So for sure that, also these automatic door openers are great, because a lot of people have started locking their workspaces because there's not the flow of people that are coming in and out. So you've got a locked front door, and you know, you can't have your receptionist getting up and opening up the door all the time, because then she's right in the face of someone that, you know, who knows where they've been. But so I say automatic door openers, and they're not that expensive, especially if you already have a key fob system. They actually can tie into those. I would say absolutely. Mask stations right in the front where people can, you know, grab their masks in a sanitary way. Hand sanitizing always in the front, and then processes. So each of the people, say, that come in on a daily basis, like FedEx or mail people or whatever, you need to be in control of your own process of how you want them to enter and you know, deliver their products to your workspace. So I think it's really important to go ahead and write that process and then give it to those people and have them acknowledge it and sign it. And if you need to post those, I think that's important as well. Having visitor policies in the reception area is really important. That you know, kind of say exactly what you are saying they have to do. For example, wear a mask, or, you know, follow the signage. The signage is a really, really interesting piece, and I think I'll go into that when we do reorganize. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So the reorganize phase, that's where I think you see the most change to the workspace. And so this is a typical, this is a client we did. They're a medical client, and they were considered essential because they do blood clot. You know, they had to stay at work. So when you're together like this in this benching type workstations, they do not meet social distancing. So you can just pull them apart if you want, but it's not a really good plan. So we ended up actually completely, you know, turning them 90 degrees and putting plastic dividers in between. So it looks like, you know, it looks like the same workstation, but there's actually a full height plastic divider in between, or plexiglass. And they met social distancing, and we actually picked up some space, which was interesting. So it's not like you're always going to lose space when you redo this. I think that the people liked this because they felt a little safer. They were only kind of like near one person. But it did take relocation of electrical, relocation of data cabling. It took some additional parts from furniture. So it's not just like you can just pick up your stuff and move it around. There's a whole, you know, a whole science behind how you have to get it to look like that. And there's a lot of prep work, especially because furniture pieces can have different lead times. We took it upon ourselves to get relationships with some people that can work on any types of furniture, but sometimes people just want, if they have, say, Han furniture, they just want the Han panels so that everything looks similar. And then the social distance, so you can see an example down there of the plexi dividers. And those actually, you know, we can find them and custom make them that we can get really quickly, and they fit on any kind of furniture because you can custom the brackets that they attach to. So I'm sure everyone's familiar with all the signs on the floor. I got yelled at the grocery store because I didn't pay attention. I should have known better. But, you know, looking at the directional signage and the social distancing signage, those are really important as well. So a lot of people have asked us to custom make these so that they have their logo on them. You know, just telling people what needs to happen. Posting your cleaning procedures is really important. Telling people where they need to stand, you know, coming up and down stairwells so that they're not running into people or crossing paths with people. You know, this can go as big or minimum. The minimum requirements are the social distancing and the maximum occupancy. So, but a lot of people are actually doing directional signage where they're saying, I'm sure you've seen it in places where, but around workstations, they're saying if you come out of your workstation and you're exiting to go to the break room, you can only turn left, and then these people can only turn right. So they're really like limiting the amount of times people cross paths, which I think can be effective, especially if people get careless and they're not wearing masks, so they're not, you know, sanitizing their hands because they're on their way somewhere. If you go to the next slide, this is an actual floor plan of what we did, and we went in and we said, okay, this is how many people, and this is how we get the occupancy signage, because I'm sure you all are familiar with the occupancy signage that you have now. That's just based on building code. This occupancy signage is actually based on our application of social distancing. So we go in and we figure out how many people can be in your conference room, and then you're really responsible to remove the chairs. So if you can only have 8 people and you have a 16-person conference room, you have to take out 8 chairs. But it's interesting to know, because some people are like, oh, we can't be in that office, there's too many people. But if you do the math, it's like, yeah, you can actually. You can actually comply, you know, having 3 people in an office depending on how their desks are laid out. So we do this for our clients, and this particular client wanted, you know, the really extensive signage package that had like stop and wait. It had lanes and directions, and, you know, posted things in the break room saying you can only be here at this given time if you're color coded to green. I mean, it was pretty intense. So, you know, again, I think this can go as far as you need it to go, but when we do the reorganizing, we at least let you know this is what you know, this is what complies. What you choose to do and what you choose to help us implement with is really up to you. But it's nice to have a plan, and I think it's nice to be able to show your employees that you've actually, you know, figured this out. It goes a long way. So the next slide is more pictures of people social distancing, and we show them that in the break room. So where you had maybe lots of tables that were collected, you know, together. Now we say, okay, but you can only have 6 people or 5 people in that area. And, you know, and they have to police themselves. So a lot of the policies that we're recommending people write with their employees are a self-policing sort of policy, I guess. Like, we're telling you that you need to do this, but we're not walking around like wiping your hands for you. You have to, you know, be responsible for it, which I think is important.
I've got a question for you. So you've obviously, you've already done dozens of clients that are, you know, essential businesses. So you've had to go in there right away and take care of them.
Correct.
And, you know, you have large companies that, you know, that house, you know, dozens and dozens of people who have their lunch break at the same time and around and need to get coffee and whatnot. You know, how have these companies and these employees, how have they reacted? I mean, what has been the overall, like, is it mostly success, or, you know, how has it actually been implemented and how is it going?
So I think that it depends on the type of business. So with manufacturing, it can be really difficult, because with manufacturing, everybody takes their breaks at certain times. So you're basically having to stagger them, and you're saying, okay, again, the one manufacturing company that we actually consulted with, we said, you know, you have to tell people, like, if you're in group red, you can go to the break room between 10:30 and 10:45, and then group blue is, you know, beyond that. That's pretty complicated because that's a whole bunch of people trying to use a facility at once. With offices, you know, I think that's going to be, you know, people's tolerance to that is going to sort of come out, because most of the people that we're dealing with right now haven't had their whole workforce back to work yet. And so they haven't understood that you really only can have 4 people in that area. And so, okay, so employees are they gonna have to eat at their desks? Are they gonna have to, you know, even making coffee? One of the things that I know a lot of these coffee people are trying to do is get an app so that you can actually have your coffee made before you get there. You don't have to touch it. They're doing that in the Netherlands, but we haven't quite caught up with that technology. So I think people are willing, it depends, but I think they're willing to follow the rules, but I'm not sure that we've seen as many people back to work that would affect, you know, their tolerance. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just, I hate the term, the new normal, but still, this is going to take some time. This is a behavior change for people. So
absolutely,
it's going to be very interesting to kind of see this all, you know, roll out.
Yeah, we had a client that was a law firm, and we had to have them institute a policy much like a medical office. And so we suggested that they have people call before they even get in the elevator, because if they already had 3 people in their waiting room, then, or their reception area, then no one else can come in. And so it's like, what do? You know, how do you have a different plan, or do you tell them to wait downstairs? I mean, there's a lot of things that haven't truly been thought out, but that's what we help to do, because we look at how you do business, and it's very custom.
Yeah. We had a question that came in from Shelley, who wants to know about larger office complexes with shared space, elevators, etc.
So with the larger office complexes, what I'm seeing, and I'm just starting to participate with certain landlords. So there's a landlord responsibility and a tenant responsibility. And I think that it's really important, if you are in, say, a high-rise building, that you really understand the policy that your landlord's putting out, because it has to do with elevators, gathering space, you know, the lobby, all of that, you know, restrooms. So that is something that I'm seeing the landlords actually, you know, they're understanding that that's their responsibility, especially the retail landlords. And because I think they were so wanting to get back to work so fast, right? So they were a little bit ahead of the game, because they can't really work from home in the retail spaces. So I think it's really important to know what your landlord's doing, and make sure that that plan meets your needs, and make sure that your employees understand those rules, because you're going to have a separate set of rules than your landlord is. Did I answer the question? Or?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, you bring up probably a whole nother, you know, webinar, which is basically, you know, the liability between the landlord and the organization, and who's responsible for what. But, you know, for the sake of this webinar, I would say we need to be responsible as an organization. We might as well be responsible for, you know, from the time the employee gets out of the car till the time the employee gets back in the car, just so that we're covering all of our bases.
Yeah, and I think part of that is making sure that the employees understand the landlord's policy, you know, and those are still evolving as well. I mean, I saw landlords that were only letting 1 person in an elevator, and now they're, you know, figuring out that maybe they'll let 2 people in, or and who knows what that's going to look like, you know, in 3 weeks even.
Right.
Okay, so the next piece is the REENERGIZE piece. And I think that the biggest takeaway on this, I mean, obviously we all know if we need to replace carpet, and that's disruptive, but those type of capital improvements, you know, a lot of people are reticent to spend money right now, and I absolutely understand. You know, it's just sort of that you have to weigh that risk. Like, if you were going to do it anyway in 4 months, how much more does it cost to do it when you have a full office than it would to, because there is a cost for doing these capital improvements. I mean, as a general contractor, I know this, on off hours and having to work around a fully occupied office. So I think it's important to know if that's something that you were even thinking about, you know, to take a look at it, and we can kind of analyze that for you and look at some cost structures. But I think the biggest thing is that we're going to need more conference rooms. So we call them huddle rooms, the smaller conference rooms. Those can be considered like Zoom rooms, but if they're really small, you know, you can only have a certain amount of people. So I think what you're going to see is, instead of office space shrinking as much as people think it is, I think you're going to have more spaces for people to go into, like small conference rooms, huddle rooms, things like that. We're even seeing some, like they call them Zoom rooms, but they're for one person, and it's almost like, I don't know if you remember the Google Nap Pod, but you go into it and shut the door, and then you can do a Zoom call, and it's just for one person, and you're, you know, completely distanced. But it's something you couldn't have done at your desk because you didn't have the technology for it. And I think that conference room technology and virtual, it's obviously the future. So you're going to see the biggest, I think, escalation of product offerings from the technology people, because I think that really they weren't being pushed, and now they are. But I do think that analyzing your office footprint, is having that first analysis done, is important, because you may say, oh yeah, I'm going to have a reduction of workforce, and I'm also going to have people working at home 25%, but I'm going to need more conference rooms, or I'm going to need more, you know, waiting room space, or I'm going to need more of this. So I think it's really important, you know, to understand. So the fun thing that I have is to maybe talk about some of these. The next slide is some of these new workplace trends. Unless you want to do a question or anything, I don't want to. Jennifer, this is your game.
Oh no! Well, this might be a great time to do another polling question, since we have 3. So, all right, poll 2: which updates will you make? This is perfect timing here. So, which of the following do you plan to implement once you start the transition back? Select all that apply. Health and safety procedures. Reconfigure workstations to promote social distancing. Make capital improvements to optimize facilities and enhance virtual meeting capabilities. Work a permanent option for the roles that allow for it. Real estate footprint. So we'll give everyone a moment to answer that question, and then when the results are ready, we'll pop those up.
Yeah, and while we're talking about that, I can tell you on this other side, I was working with a client who was a small client, nonprofit. They were looking at 4,000 square feet before COVID hit. Then they ended up really rethinking what they needed, and they ended up with only 2,700 square feet, which was a significant cost savings for them. And they realized that because of, you know, taking into consideration everything that they were thinking about, they were okay with you know, that much less space. I mean, it was almost 40% less space.
Wow. Wow.
So I'm very happy to see 97%. I would say those 3%, I'm just, there's a lot of lawyers that are chomping at the bit right now. So I think that would be the easiest thing you can do to not, you know, have some sort of frivolous lawsuit.
Absolutely. Yeah, looks like lots of proactive people on here. So what we're thinking about, I had one more question on that. So you're talking about when you reconfigure the workspace, so as long as you have some sort of, you called it the protective, like plexiglass or whatnot, the 6 feet is no longer an issue, as long as there's a protective glass in between, or a plexiglass in between.
Yes, but that's only if the employee feels comfortable, which is very interesting, because yes, so for a receptionist, for example, she has the protective plexiglass, but then there's a big hole down so that people can pass things through. So she has to feel, or he or she has to feel comfortable that is enough to keep people away, because it's a little bit tricky. So she may decide to excuse herself when they push things over, and then, you know, do whatever. But technically, yes, if you have a barrier, you are accommodating for social distancing without being 6 feet away.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, so if we want to move to the next slide, so this is just, I think, more about conference rooms and technology. I can't stress enough how much those are going to be important in moving forward. And you can see at the bottom, there's a guy at his Workspace, and he's, you know, having a Zoom call. That's awesome. But if he's at a call center or some sort of like, if he's in accounting and there's all kinds of people buzzing around, you know, it might be really, really distracting. So I think that it's important to understand how much people are going to have to be on these Zoom calls, these virtual calls. But you know, still, it's just really looking at what you can do to entice people to come back and also entice the future workforce. Because I think you brought up a really good point, Jennifer, about millennials. You know, it's kind of been my joke, because I am definitely not a millennial. So it's been kind of my joke that, you know, we always were catering to them, and we were catering to their sort of requirements in the workplace. And now we don't know how to pivot those, because we don't know if they're going to be more or less conscious of, you know, being safe. So they, you know, they're young, right? So some of them feel like they're, you know, completely, you know, not vulnerable to anything. But they also, you know, I have a couple people in my office that are living with older people, so you just don't know. But right. I do think that if you take the safety part out, millennials or Gen Z is now entering the workspace, they're going to be in charge of basically deciding whether or not you're a good company to work for. And a lot of that's going to be safety and health of the building, and how do things appear? Are they clean? And it's interesting that that's going to be one of the things that motivate people to come work for you.
And based on survey results, not only in our organization, but ones where my clients have been part of, you know, the uncomfortableness, or the people that are concerned, it's not necessarily an age thing. I mean, like, you know, 20 somethings, 30 somethings, 40 somethings, you know, whether there's a pre-existing or maybe not, and it's just their concerns, they don't feel safe. It's not necessarily an age situation. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, and how, you know, that generation loves to collaborate. It was all about, you know, this urban living and, you know, these common spaces, which were, you know, fabulous and wonderful. I mean, you take our LA offices in the WeWork, it's in a WeWork. Mm-hmm. So what happens there? You know, what are we going to do there? So it's very interesting how this is all unfolding.
Co-working has actually been especially troubling, and I do a lot of construction for co-working. So I've been consulting with a lot of my clients about what to do, because co-working, you know, a lot of people were saying, oh, I'm just going to get a really small office and I'm going to put 4 people in it. And so there's going to have to be some limitations that the actual co-working company says you cannot do that anymore. Like, you are, this office is only allowed for 1 person or 2 people. And I think that's going to, you know, make people rethink how much of that space they were cramming people into, that they can't do that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a perfect tee up for our last question, because it's on surveys. So we'll do that real quick. So, have you surveyed your employees to better understand their workplace safety concerns? Yes or no?
And one of the other things, while people are answering that question, one of the things that I would, you know, that we personally had experience with, being, you know, kind of going back to work a long time ago, which we kept pushing off because of people's fear, interestingly enough, because we were doing constant surveys. But I think it's important to designate a person, and it depends on your company. It could be your HR person, it could be someone else, but designate a person that's willing to listen to people's complaints, because that to me is, you know, if people are feeling unsafe, they have to have a place to vent what they're feeling unsafe about. I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, you have a hostile workplace or you have an unsafe workplace now. I mean, it's a whole different category. And so making sure that you're conscious of letting people complain, you know, letting people vent where they feel unsafe, I think is really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, here are the results. So it's not surprising because so many of us aren't back to work yet, and we're still thinking about that. And so, but it's good to see that, you know, over 50% have already surveyed, and they're probably feeling the same way we are, which is just kind of surprised at how just all over the place and how people feel about it. I mean, we're talking about very, very serious, and I don't want to say extreme, but very, you know, we have extremes on both sides. So, and it doesn't matter because if one person feels unsafe or one person needs to be accommodated, it's an organization issue. So this is such an important topic.
Yeah, and I think that they, you know, right now I'm not a lawyer again, like no way could I pass that class. But I think it's important that people understand that you can't force people right now to come back to work. So I don't know when you're going to be able to force people to come back to work. I have no idea what that legislation is going to look like. But, you know, if you possibly in the future, if you comply with all these things and you provide a place for someone, then they're going to be required to come back to work. But that's not the case right now from what I'm hearing, and all the advice I'm getting from all those really smarty pants people is don't force them to come back. If they can telecommute, let them telecommute.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then also, by the way, for those of you who are listening, we can send out both Casco's and Alliance Resource Group surveys so that so many that haven't surveyed, at least this will give you a benchmark, you know, place to start. So we'll send those out to all participants.
Yes.
Okay.
So then the last thing was kind of just a little fun thing that I put together on funky new workplace trends, and you know, it's just something to be maybe aware of or to start polling your people about. But like these little Zoom rooms, there are little pictures of these guys. You know, with those, there's all these other things about people saying, well, how do you sterilize them? How do you know that they were, you know, and that gets back into policy. So policy is a huge piece of this, you know, logistics and policy. But I want one of those really bad. I think they're really cool. And I would love to do that instead of in my dark office. I was not prepared to go work from home, I'm just saying. But the app-based coffee machines, I think, are really interesting. And then everyone's coming out, and be really, really careful. Everyone's coming out with what they're calling antimicrobial materials or cleansing products that stay on the surface and continue to kill germs. And don't let people sell you. I would consult with somebody who's certified. There really actually are certified COVID-19, and I can give people recommendations or handle that for them. But it's, you know, some of these procedures are vastly untested. So one of the things that someone told me, they said, yeah, you can spray this stuff all over your desk and it stays on your desk and it kills all those germs when, you know, later for like 24 hours. Like, yeah, it stays on your desk, it stays on your clothes, it gets in your eyes, it gets on, you know. So is that really, you know, a prudent way of solving the problem? Electrostatic fogging, I don't know if everyone's familiar with what fogging is, but really what fogging does is it electrostatically removes the particles from the air and drops them onto a hard surface where they're sanitized off. So, you know, electrostatic, there's different kinds of electrostatic fogging or different kinds of fogging. Electrostatic is one of the, I think, the cleanest, but again, we're hoping it's the most effective. But, you know, that would be something I would recommend doing if you were very high risk, or if you had a confirmed COVID case. I would absolutely say you should fog, because it does get all the particulates out of the air, and then the process that they use to get the material off surfaces makes it kind of bulletproof for that. But I don't know that everyone's going to need that. The UV lighting is great. We've done a lot of experiments on that. The issues is that you have to have clear contact with whatever surface it is. So if something's behind something, it doesn't get the UV lighting. And the jury's still also a little bit out on whether or not UV lighting causes cancer. So I think those are things that you should be really careful about before you run out and jump on the trend. But I think that you're going to see that there might even be, you know, UV lighting installed that kills germs at night when all the people leave the office. I would not be surprised. The one fun thing that I'm seeing, and as a general contractor, you know, I'm kind of a fight for like this because supply chains can be really difficult. And what we're seeing now is that some levels of the supply chains are kind of being, you know, X'd out because we're going direct more. We're going direct to vendors and we're going direct to people. So I think that's an interesting trend that needs to be monitored because, you know, hopefully you're not in a supply chain that could be engineered out. Like think some kinds of reps and things like that. And then back to the fight for employees' health and well-being. That's going to be consistently on everyone's tongue about what are you doing? What are we doing? And it seems pretty simple, but, you know, actually, you know, I don't know that I was this concerned about my employees' health and well-being a year ago. Maybe I should have been, but I wasn't, but now I am.
Makes sense. A question on, is there a CEO checklist or something that Casco has that can kind of list out, you know, so we can, I was talking about checking the boxes earlier and how difficult that is. Do we have some sort of summary or something that we can share with the group?
Yes, so I can post something on the website. Understand that they are very custom. So sometimes it's worth just kind of figuring out because the checklist is kind of some of the things that we've already gone over, but how you implement them can be the part that's the tricky part. And so, yeah, but I would say if you just wanted the very basics, it's going to be, you know, your mask policy, your sanitizing policy, and social distance signage is like the basic. Those are, I think, going to be required. No one's coming out and saying they're required. It's just a way that people are using to implement the how on the social distancing requirements.
Yep, makes sense, makes sense. And then knowing that you're not, I mean, obviously you're not a fortune teller, but
I know one.
Do you feel these are kind of permanent changes? I mean, not to the extreme, but you know, what do you think is going to be lasting through this? You know, we're going to get a vaccine at some point, December or next year or whatnot. You know, what are some of the things that you believe are going to be, that's going to have lasting, you know, effects that we're going to still have, and, you know, how's our behavior going to change long term?
Well, I really hope that masks are not part of the lasting change because I really can't stand wearing a mask. But I do. But what I'm seeing is it's going to be more about informing employees and informing customers and clients on what kind of workplace or what kind of retail store or what kind of restaurant you have and what those policies are. I don't think that's going away. I think that we're going to be required to post things. And I think that, you know, whereas you never thought twice about who sat at your table before and what dirty rag, you know, maybe the restaurant wiped the table down with, I think now there's going to be, you know, people are going to require posted things on what these policies are. Same with, you know, employees, you know, wanting to have how the cleaning company cleans, like knowing that kind of stuff. And then for sure, remote workplaces. I mean, and it's interesting because part of my survey, one of the questions, and if you download it, you'll see one of the questions was, is your workspace comfortable at home? Because I am not in control of how many bedrooms people have that they can, whatever, address for their office. So people are working in their kitchens. You know, I can't tell you how many brand new babies I've seen on Zoom calls because, you know, they're there and you better hold them because and nobody cares anymore. There was one lady, did you hear that she walked naked into her kid's room and he was on a Zoom call with his school? Oh, that was really funny. Why are you naked in your kid's room? But anyway, I think that the working from home is absolutely here to stay. And you've seen that with the technology companies that came out Twitter and Facebook, they're using that as a way to attract people. And then technology. Those are really, I think it's pretty simple. But I think people will still want to maintain distance, but maybe not to the extent that we are now.
Well, we're out of time, but just want to say thank you so much, Cheryl, for all your wisdom. I mean, this is a difficult time because most people that are watching this is because they are responsible. They are interested in getting their employees back to work safely, for them to feel safe and for this to move forward. And this is, has become more complicated with this. I mean, before we'd worry about, their physical safety or, workers' comp or what now. This is a whole new ballgame with absolutely no policy in place, and we're making this up as we go. So you gave us lots to think about. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate. And any questions? If you have questions, can they email you directly?
Absolutely. Email me anything. Email me for anything. So my email, I don't know if my email's on here, but my email is Cheryl@CascoContractors.com. So CHERYL@CascoContractors.com. You're absolutely welcome to email me directly.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for all that listened and gave us an hour of your time, and stay safe and healthy out there.
Bye.